going on? We are Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Vince.
And we are back for more multi-topic extravaganza. Finally back from the break. Vince, it's been a while. It's been so long, I bet nobody even remembers any of the questions that we've answered. So if we answer any twice, nobody will even know. It won't matter.
Don't go back and watch those old videos.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Pretend. No. Well, you know, we appreciate that too. But don't, because we might actually... No, we won't. Anyway,
just click play. Don't actually listen.
We're going to try to make this our last one for this year. We've got 3 pages left. We're going to shoot through them as fast as possible, but I always say that, and we always get hung up on something that we think is really interesting. So we're going to try not to do that this time, though. We're going to blow through it as much as humanly possible. But there may be one more video after this. So anyway, after we get finished with the multi-topic extravaganza, we're going to get back to regular GNNs, and some of these things we're likely to go back and revisit, and any cool comments, any cool questions that we see that were asked later that we haven't gotten to, we'll definitely take a look at and revisit and consider, visit for the first time, and consider making videos of later on. Vince, you ready to get started?
Yes!
Our first question for today comes from William Parcell, and he says, do you think the horror genre, remember, of course, that, once again, we've not looked at these ahead of time, do you think the horror genre is ineffective in comic book form? I find horror films scary when they don't show me too much, but stimulates my brain to imagine what's creeping in the shadows. Basically, they make you scare yourself. Somehow it doesn't seem to work when there are still images on panels. You know, I can kind of understand that position, Vince, but I don't know that I have that. What do you think?
I don't think it's ineffective because it's a different thing. Since it's a different genre, you write it as a different thing. A comedic movie is not the same thing as a comedic comic book. So I've seen people I've read some slapstick prose. Doesn't work. But there is still such a thing as comedic novels.
Well, what's the difference with comics and movies?
Well, comics
for an effective kind. I mean, have you seen comics attempt jump scares and things like that? I mean, have you seen a comic that, like comedy like slapstick in prose, has been like, I'm gonna do it like, I mean, because they are, because they are storyboards. I mean, you would still storyboard a horror movie, and it would look like a comic in storyboard.
You know, I feel like I've seen that attempted, but it doesn't make any sense. It's, in my mind, an action movie has more in comic with an action comic.
Yeah,
I think I still said it wrong, but
no, you didn't.
A horror movie, or excuse me, a horror comic has more in common with a horror novel, because there is no such thing as a jump scare when you control the pacing. I mean, you can read it as fast or as slow as you want to. It goes down to your speed. So you have to be more conceptually horrific. And in my mind, especially like drawn gore doesn't get me nearly as much as visual gore. And even then, I still don't really much care for the jump scare movies unless it's funny. And like ridiculous. Like Your Next was kind of funny. I wouldn't call it good, but it was funny, and but stuff like that doesn't work in comics. So if your epitome of horror is all about the jump scare, fine. But if you can appreciate more of a conceptual horror, like some terrible thing is going down and it's about survival, then you have a horror comic.
Yeah, I mean, I think comics can be unnerving and disturbing.
I would recommend the Hellraiser stuff that Epic put out years ago. Anyway, since you said unnerving and disturbing, it just reminded me of that.
It's like that, yeah. I've thought that some of the IDW X-Files comics have been that way. I don't read a bunch of horror, of course, but like the stuff I've read that I actually that I actually found kind of chilling or disturbing or whatever, and even sometimes we can get this in superhero comics. I mean, I thought that I don't mean to go back to this all the time, but I mean, I thought that Snyder's Black Mirror, Snyder does really good, effective, scary horror comics, and I thought that Black Mirror kind of had that, where it's if you make it, I think that the psychological thriller works really well in comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm creeped out by that for the same reason I would be in a movie, because I'm thinking about it. You have to manipulate people's imaginations. And that's why you're right, Vince, when you say that it has more in common with horror prose, maybe than it does with horror movies. And having said that, though, you can certainly encapsulate and translate the spookiness and the visual atmosphere of a horror movie to a comic book. And I think it's possible to make it, in a way, more creepy depending on how you handle it, just because more of it is left up to your imagination. Once again, just like if somebody's telling you a ghost story and it's all playing in your head. But you're right that, you control the pacing, so what about it creeps you out or is scary is different, and that's why I think that I feel like this in general anyway, but especially with something like comics, I just think that the best stories in general are the character-driven stories. So if I really care about a character and I'm relating to them and I'm with them and I feel like I'm there, then I'm going to be scared or creeped out just in the sense that I don't want something bad to happen to this person, but also just setting up a really twisted mystery or whatever. But I will also say that I have, Vince, been freaked out by gore and stuff in a comic before, especially because here's the thing: there is an equivalent of jump scares in comics, and that is the page turn. When you turn a page and you don't know what's coming and there's a full page spread and it is mortifying, that is as or more effective than a good jump scare. And we talk a lot about how jump scares don't even work a lot of the time in movies. I think that if it's placed right and it's not right in the middle, it's not exactly where you expect, you can still make that work in a comic book because you don't know what you're going to get when you turn that page.
Because part of it is, it's not so much that, I agree, it's kind of like the comic equivalent, but the idea is the thing you are seeing is mortifying as opposed to the thing you are seeing is startling. So
exactly.
You can have a mortifying jump scare, but you can also just have things that are loud. Like a lot of movies, they'll have somebody like, Betty! And you're like, oh God, you scared me! I didn't know what to expect. You're my father, and you just wanted to show me this thing that you made in your garage. Yeah, it turns out it's a murder thing!
The thing about... Just get that out of my... The harpoon out of my chest. That's mine. No, that's not mine. That's Seinfeld.
That's Meinfeld.
Meinfeld.
I think that's the thing they did in Vietnam.
I was going to say something about that whole thing. You stop it. The thing about reading horror in a comic, of course, versus seeing it in a movie is that, like you said, you control that pacing. So something that you can't do with a mortifying image in a movie, and this is a good thing a lot of the time, is you can't stare at it for 10 minutes. But in a comic, you could want to do that. You could, even though it's absolutely horrifying, and it might almost be desensitizing you. It might still be such a clever or creative way of killing a person or maiming a person or whatever it is that it's like a train wreck. You can't look away. I had this, and this is one of those few times where I'm going to really praise a McFarlane comic, but I talked about this in Spawn Year, issue number 5 with Billy Kincaid with the popsicle sticks. I stared at it for 5 straight minutes. And I said that in that review, and of course I exaggerate a lot in that, but I wasn't exaggerating there as far as the first time I ever read it, especially because I was a kid the first time I ever looked at that, which was, not what I should have been doing, but a friend of mine was showing me these comics, and it was absolutely horrible.
Pornography.
If you had that in effectively a similar kind of experience, right? When you're a kid. But anyway, that was a thing where I just couldn't look away. I just kept looking at it, and because of that, I think it was effective. I see where William's coming from, and why he feels that way. And some of it, for me, can sometimes be a taste thing where this is not the same thing at all, but I
wouldn't want to taste those popsicles.
But I can read a really good just dialogue-driven story in a comic book, Vince, but if there's not a visual element, and even if it's great, if there's not enough of a visual element, I just wish I was reading it in short story form, and it takes me out, and it makes it hard for me to get through it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so he might be having sort of a similar thing with horror, where he's like, I need this to be on screen, or I need a certain kind of pacing, or something. I mean, I'm just saying, I can kind of appreciate that.
And sometimes audio is such an important thing in horror.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
So, yeah. Yes, indeed.
Well, let's go ahead and move on. Great question. Moisted Avenger, great handle there. My question is, Vince!
Yes!
What are your favorite Misfits songs? And Danzig and Michael, from both the Danzig and Michael Graves eras.
I will be honest with you. I like the Misfits. I've listened to a lot of the Misfits. I've never differentiated between the eras. So it's never been a thing.
You just completely discredited yourself as a fan of that, and you should stop wearing that shirt.
You're
gonna have to wear not that shirt.
Oh, okay.
We still can't decide we don't know what he's wearing today. We have no idea what that is.
I was given this for free, and I was like, I like the zombies.
You know how I have that Crow shirt that when I wear it with the Misfit shirt, it looks like we're wearing the same shirt, but they're not the same shirt. Right. You're gonna have to start wearing that Crow shirt.
Yeah.
Well, one that fits you, not mine.
That's fair. This is really tight.
What are your favorite Misfit songs?
I really like a lot of the songs from Cuts from the Crypt, which it goes back to some of that Danzig stuff. I really like Helena. I think that Cuts from the Crypt version of Helena is pretty fun. I mean, for those of you who don't know, some of the lyrics are, if I cut off your arms and I cut off your legs, would you still love me anyway?
And would it be scarier in a comic book or a movie?
And I get a kick out of some of their stuff, like, I really like Project 1950. I know that's Jerry Only, and it seems like people kind of hate Jerry Only, but it's fun. Project 1950 is like punk or horror punk versions of 1950 songs.
Oh, so, okay. You know what? I've listened to some of that because I have a lot of your library in my computer, and I think I've found some of that stuff at some point and listened to some of it.
Yeah.
I couldn't decide what I thought of it.
I got a kick out of it.
Yeah, there were bits of it where there's a novelty to it, but it's not, like, re-listenable.
And you know what? There's a lot of that Misfit stuff that I would just put into my player and listen to it. It never occurred to me to look up the name. I mean, I've never professed to be a fan of the Misfits. I just like them. Does that make sense?
When you wear something on your sleeve, buddy, it's just like spouting off one phrase in a foreign language. Anybody from there is going to be like, you must know all of it.
I have a Battlestar Galactica shirt. I've never watched more than 2 episodes of Battlestar Galactica.
So now let me think. Do I have anything like that? I don't tend to buy shirts that I don't know something from.
I don't even like the G.I. Joes. I hate them.
And you have a G.I. Joe shirt?
I have a G.I. Joe shirt.
Why do you wear that?
Because it fits me, and I got it from Nerd Block. So, it is what it is. And you know what? I like the X-Men, but I'm not a fan of the X-Men. So if people are like, well, what do you like more? The Claremont era or the Hoo-Da-Ha? I'm like, I don't know. I liked Whedon's.
Obviously, Claremont's better than the Hoo-Da-Ha
era. That Hoo-Da-Ha era. Jim Lee's version of the X-Men are very pretty.
For some reason, the Hoo-Da-Ha era, whoever was right, I don't know who. Well, I guess it was Jim Hoo-Da-Ha, and Jim Hoo-Da-Ha, Vince, didn't apparently Shadow King was the only X-Men villain he had ever heard of because that's all he ever used was Shadow King. It was 200 issues of Shadow King.
A lot of people like Where Eagles Dare. That's not my thing. That's kind of like the Misfits song that got really popular.
Were you using that as a stall out so you could think of a thing?
Yes.
That was smart, Vince. So, you were like, thank God he's telling a terrible joke right now.
I just thought of a Misfits thing that it seems to be that the stuff that I like is not the stuff that everybody likes. But, and you know what? The only time I've ever separated out Danzig as being the creator of it was when he did his own death metal thing. And, I mean, everybody likes Mother, but there's a couple other Danzig songs especially from that.
You seem slightly insecure about this question.
I am slightly insecure because it seems to be that a lot of people I know that are like, Vince really likes the Misfits. And I'm like, no, I know a lot of people that really like the Misfits. Well, so yeah, I like it. I listen to it.
I think part of it is I've never seen anybody else wear a Misfit shirt.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I see them wearing it like punk stuff, and I see like punk events. I've gone to a couple of shows where people wear Misfits.
Punk events?
Yeah, punk concerts.
Punk events.
I've gone to like a garage band's hangout. I went to a punk show, and then I don't know why I was necessarily hanging out with the band afterward. I mean, I know a guy that was like, I'm going to go hang out with the band. We need to go. And I said, all right. So I'm hanging out with the band, and I got to pee like crazy. And we're in this garage, and I said, hey, man, you got a can? And he says, yes, just a minute. And this is the lead singer of the band. He walks over to a corner, and he comes back to me, and he dumps a bunch of crap out of a can and hands it to me. And I said, do you have a toilet I could use? But I appreciate your vim and vigor here, sir. Yep, that's a real thing. Apparently, don't ask for a can if you're at a party, because people hand you an actual can. Probably not. Most people probably say the toilet's upstairs, but...
Okay, so in an effort to slowly blow through these...
Let's get to the next one.
Let's get it started. Okay, here we go, man. So, the Geek Night 4 asks, wow, this is a great question. Oh, this is tough. When does a narrative necessitate nonlinear storytelling?
Necessitate? Sometimes I feel like they benefit. Well, I guess I will say...
Yeah, that's a great question. Have you ever seen a story that you could not imagine the information and events given to you in an out-of-sequence format? Now, everybody always goes to Pulp Fiction, but, like...
Yeah, I mean, Pulp Fiction's an easy one to go to. Memento's
an
easy one to go
yeah.
to. I mean, I guess I would say with Pulp Fiction, because it's an easy example, is that the thing about it is that you don't need the events to happen in a linear fashion. One, because it is a vignette film.
Yeah.
And two, because if you showed them...
and then Sin City's that way, too.
True.
Yeah.
If you showed them in a linear fashion, what you would have is a movie where the climax happens at the wrong point in the movie. So,
well, okay, but then that just becomes a structural thing. I mean, like, could you find a way to get away with telling it in order and still make it compelling?
I kind of feel like there's nothing, unless there is a conceit for the storytelling, like in Memento. Mm-hmm. There is nothing that necessitates it, because if I watch something that's out of order, I get a little frustrated with it. Not because I can't understand it, but because so much of, like...
Sometimes it feels like a gimmick, right?
Yeah, sometimes the present or the past
sort of
is
clever, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like the present or the past is getting shortchanged. Like, I don't care what's happening right now. Let's just tell the movie in the past.
Well, let me say that I tend, and this is just my instincts. I don't know if I'm right about this. I tend to feel like it works better in prose than it does on film usually.
I can see that.
Now, if you're adapting a thing that did it in prose, then you're probably going to want to go there. But I think that in general, and I don't have any great examples, in general, I think it has to do usually with what we need to be informed about characters in order to appreciate and understand what's going on in a scene. Sometimes, and again, I don't know that it's necessary, but when it's done in a really artistic way, it's when... it's when I am so glad that the order of events was mixed around, because when I get to a certain scene and I know things about a character that I wouldn't have had it been in order, I'm not going to appreciate the significance of it, and I might not have been able to think back and remembered it as a foreshadowing thing.
Fair enough.
You see what I'm saying? Okay, I think Breaking Bad's a really good example.
I can see that.
Because Breaking Bad is not a linear show with flashbacks. It's a show told out of order to a degree. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm saying? Because there are parts, there are the difference between that and Lost is Lost has flashbacks. That show, and flash forwards, but even when we're in the present, we're looking at the future, it's still like scenes that inform it rather than all the time, although it's a little different with the flash forwards, but rather than all the time being another subplot that's being told that will converge later. Although it's more that way in Lost with the flash forwards. With Breaking Bad, when we keep getting in that last season, for example, and I use Breaking Bad as an example because I always think of that as a novel told on screen, so it almost fits both categories in my brain. Mm-hmm. When you look at that final season and you see a lot of those teasers, and maybe they happen in different places too, I forget, are Walter White in the future with the beard, like putting things in his car and getting set up for the thing he's going to do for the climax at the very end. I kind of like that we didn't have to drag down the last episode watching all of that we'd seen it already, and it was a compelling mystery wondering how he got to that place and all of that, and it didn't feel as gimmicky as it could have in another thing, but there is some teasing the audience. I mean, I do think that is more about keeping an audience engaged than it is you need to see these pieces. But it also did inform the present. There's we know that he has ricin. Who's he going to use it on? What's that for? And so so it does kind of inform the scenes as we're seeing them and going along. And I did find that exciting and engaging. So I mean, it was done in a thoughtful way. Oftentimes, it's not done in a thoughtful way.
I mean, sometimes, like, especially with Breaking Bad, certain things would just increase my anxiety during an episode. And, I mean, like, it should in a good way. Like, you see that just destroyed teddy bear in
Would
a pool.
Breaking Bad have worked in a comic book? That's a good... I think it would have.
I think it would have. I don't think it would have been as entertaining because you wouldn't have had Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But yeah, you have that...
And he would have landed the pizza the first time he threw it on the roof and that just because it was drawn. And do you know about that?
No.
Do you remember that scene where he throws that giant pizza onto the roof? They did that in one take. He got it right the first time.
That's awesome.
He threw it, and remember, he didn't just throw the pizza. He took a pizza box, threw the pizza box. The pizza box flips over, and the thing lands on the roof. There was an entire special feature about it.
Huh.
Hey, I'm sorry, you were making some sort of a point.
It just never seemed like a thing that would have been a big thing, I guess. In retrospect, yeah.
That's hard to do.
That's
how talented Bryan Cranston is. He can land the pizza box.
When we made our Faseketball video, it took a few tries to hit me in the face.
What I never told you is that I kept missing on purpose because I knew how much fun it was going to be to hit you in the face.
If I miss like 4 times, then that means I can continue to hit him in the face.
Then that means that when I finally hit you in the face, you will be so unprepared for it. It will look better. I didn't do that on purpose. I have no aim.
That was really funny when we finally got it on camera.
The thing I always complain about with Nonlinear is, and this happens in comics all the time, and I'm so sick of it. All the time. It is such a cliche now. I'm probably the only person that cares about this. It drives me crazy. Maybe I'm not. It drives me crazy. I complain about it a lot. In fact, sometimes I don't even mention it now with comic reviews just because I've gotten so used to seeing it, and I'm sure people are sick of listening to me talk about it. Tell me if this bothers you. Maybe we've talked about this, Vince, you and I together. You got the first page. It's a big, epic, exciting. Maybe a full splash page. Maybe just a couple panels. And you've got and DC does it everywhere. It's got a narration box, especially now. DC's got a narration box. It's like yesterday, 5:25 p.m. And then no, it'd be like tomorrow. Yeah. And then this thing happens, or like now, something like that. And then it's this big, epic, exciting thing, and then you turn the page, and now you got to read 12 pages to figure out how we got there. I really hate. That's not the same thing as in Made Us Rest, Vince. And I hate that. Have I ever seen it done effectively? Maybe. I don't know. I've seen teasers of TV shows where it sort of kind of works, but I think I'm just sick of the overuse of it. That's where Nonlinear drives me absolutely insane.
That is, like, I think it works in stuff like in Breaking Bad where you have the...
But it's not the same thing there.
Well, I know, but the thing where you see, like, the teddy bear that's destroyed.
Right.
And that's all you see, and then we go back, and now we have the knowledge that something bad is going to happen.
That's different than what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is characters are in a scene, and something is exploding or they're fighting, and then 12 pages later, now we're finally at the scene we opened at, and we catch up to it.
What I'm saying is I think that they think they're doing what Breaking Bad actually did.
I don't think that. I think that it is giving the audience no credit, that you have to open like that in order to excite people to keep reading. Because, again, they think the idea is that it's in Made Us Rest, in the middle of the action, but actually have the scene that you open with be the break-in. Action can be a break-in status quo, Vince.
Yeah.
Why
don't we just open with the last thing that happened in the previous issue, and then you have that?
But I mean, I see this even with one-shots or like number ones. I mean, I just think it's obnoxious because what it does to me is I find it boring because you open ooh, it's so exciting. I feel like I'm being teased, and I feel like again the book is giving me no credit. It's almost insulting me because I turn the page and now I have to see the origin of what got us there.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that it can never work, but most of the time, I don't know, it just happens so often. I always feel like I'm being jerked around, and I'm like, why don't you just make your setup exciting and not feel like setup? It doesn't have to.
I agree.
Okay.
And I've always kind of felt like what they were doing, and now what you said makes more sense, but I've always kind of felt like what they were doing was saying, like, don't worry, something interesting is going to happen in this book.
That's the same thing, but, like,
And
I hate that.
I feel like essentially what they're doing is they show us the cool thing that happens, and then they're using that as an excuse to tell 80% boredom until we get to the cool thing.
Well, and the excuse is probably this way the exposition won't feel as forced because now we're excited to find out how we got there. And maybe it's even a way to do more lazy exposition. Because now we know we have to have exposition, and so maybe the reader won't complain as much about exposition and dialogue, or just front loading it or whatever.
Did you ever hear about that Julia?
I'm never
Juliet
saying blow
movie?
through again.
There was a Julia Child movie
Okay.
starring Meryl Streep and the girl that recently played Lois Lane. Whatever, Amy Adams.
Yeah.
And Amy Adams' character is entirely uninteresting, but she's pretty. And then we have Julia Child's character, who is very interesting, but not modern, and certainly not, that modern style of beauty. And so we get essentially a boring story and an interesting story, but you have to watch the boring story and at the same time as you're watching the interesting story. And essentially what I'm saying here is that I feel like people are using one thing to tell the other story that doesn't need to be told. They're saying, please watch the rest of this boring crap, or I will make something interesting because the rest of this is boring. So why are we telling the
What
same
happens
story?
often with what I'm talking about is that what you have what you have is an actual, after that, break in status quo that is interesting, and I would have found a lot more interesting if you hadn't front-loaded it with that scene I'm going to see later.
Oh, okay.
Like, now it feels boring, but it wouldn't have been if you simply... a lot of it is just not being confident in the story you're telling, I think.
It makes sense. In my mind, usually when they do that, the very next thing you get to is people sitting around staring at a TV or drinking coffee.
Yeah, which, if what they're talking about is interesting, could be okay, especially if it's foreshadowing things in an interesting way, or just whatever it is that we're talking about. I don't know.
No, I'm with you. There's a Garth Ennis book where people were sitting around drinking coffee talking about mass murder, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah. That's what I like. Well, we need to knock some more of these out, Vince. We've only got about 10 minutes. Do you think that writer is primarily for... This is still Geek Night 4. Thanks for these insightful questions. Do you think that writer is primarily for film and television who allow their characters to act in ways that are completely deplorable and irresponsible without any consequences for their actions have perhaps indirectly validated that kind of behavior in the real world? Can happen. It just depends on how it's presented and whether or not it looks like glorification.
Yeah.
Case-by-case basis.
And I think you have to be already a damaged person to really sit there and believe that, rather than watch it and go, dang, that guy's a huge jerk.
Yeah, it's about thoughtfulness versus carelessness. Mm-hmm. If a character, I mean, we go back to Harry Portrait of a serial killer all the time, but that's a thing that is not glorifying violence, and that's a tough tightrope to rope because to walk. Excuse me, because you're watching whatever. Oh, dude,
We've been drinking
verbal dyslexia, Mountain Dew.
water.
But that's that kind of thing is a tough tightrope because you've got like an addicted person who is maybe even enjoying what they're doing to a degree.
Still feels a little guilty about it.
But yeah, exactly. I don't know. There's a certain amount of humanization that has to happen, or if it doesn't, again, there have to. Okay, he says without any consequences. Well, if there's no consequences, then it's likely to be read as glorification or as validating it. Yeah,
I guess you can still, guilt is still a consequence.
Yeah, but there has to be something.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
something happens as a result of something else.
And I mean, if the tone of the thing and just everything about it, the way the world is reacting to a person, this is an easier thing to talk about in a context, but where the world is reacting a certain way to a person or whatever it is, if everything about it feels like this is supposed to, the piece thinks this is a heroic character.
Yeah.
And what they do is deplorable. I guess once again I look at Spawn. What they do is deplorable. What they do is horrible. Then yeah, it's glorification. It's saying these are role models and you should be like them, even if it doesn't think it is. If the piece on the whole seems to be rewarding them for that, then yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you're telling people. Unless it's... unless you can read it as parody or as, some kind of tongue-in-cheek satire or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's
RoboCop
an
has that,
artistic purpose.
but then there's consequences for all the horrible things people do in that movie, so...
That's true.
Great question. Like that a lot. You made it easier, though, when you said without any consequences. Mr. Deadpool fan, what are your thoughts on Grant Morrison's Hyper Sigil trilogy, The Invisibles, Flex Mentallo, Man of Muscle, Mystery in the Film? I got to tell you, I've not read those. I've read some I've read some Morrison Batman. I've read Morrison's recent Multiversity. Some of it, I haven't read all of it. I'm not a giant Morrison fan. I like a lot of things that I've read of it. As I've said 1,000 times, I'm sorry for being a broken record. Morrison's kind of the only Spawn I like, and he only wrote 3 issues. I appreciate a lot of Morrison's stuff. I've not read The Invisibles. I really need to do that. And I've not read those other books either.
It's kind of hard to see.
So I will try to procure some of those for a vault down the road. And of course, Steve Baxley's a giant fan of Grant Morrison, so don't be surprised if you see Steve and I tackle some of that down the line. William Parcell already got it. Well, we've been letting people get to. He just asked them in different places, so we'll go ahead and do this too. What city... No, I'm sorry. That's Peter Parker. Excuse me. Many X-Men/Mutant fans are theorizing that Marvel is, in fact, degrading them in the comics as a jab to Fox. I feel like we talked about this already with somebody else, did we not? The whole downgrading the X-Men thing and doing more stuff with the Inhumans and all that. And, of course, this has been a while. That is continuing to happen more, and we're seeing more and more that is kind of what's going on. I've talked about that in a lot of places. I'm going to table that for now. We might do a whole GNN on it at some point. People have been asking us to talk more about that. We'll move on. William, thanks for both of your questions. We'll talk about that down the road. And yeah, we'll file that away, table it for later.
Put a pin in it.
Peter Parker, what city in DC Comics would you love to visit? And what is your favorite and least favorite thing about Netflix? Oh, I love that question. City in DC Comics, I mean, it depends on what continuity we're talking about, because Gotham is so different in different places. You had one right away. Go ahead.
Yep. Fawcett City.
Okay.
It's kind of a classic-y style place. I mean, even in the comics, they have this idea that it's magically landlocked in time. It's magically delicious! And I just love the idea of that. This city is just tasty. These marshmallows are the best. But it's a very pleasant crunch.
Pretty sure Willy Wonka was here.
It's unfortunately everybody drowned in the milk. But so I like Fawcett City.
Got stuck in that tube.
And for those of you who are like, "What's Fawcett City?" That's
Billy Batson?
where Billy Batson, Shazam, Captain Marvel. That's that city. So you have this very classic style, and there's a lot of old architecture-y, kind of smooth, kind of the antithesis to Tim Burton things. It's very bright and shiny, and
and I just referenced Willy Wonka again when you said Tim Burton.
That's funny. But I get a kick out of that stuff. I find it interesting.
I feel like the original of that movie was also the antithesis to Tim Burton.
That's also true. And so Fawcett City's where it's at for me.
Would you go to a gingerbread house? Like a
I would, but I wouldn't eat it because I would presume theuld be ants all over that thing.
Really good point. Yeah, we could be in a biodome.
There's no ants on it. Why does this taste like bug spray?
Why do you sound like Dude's Fence again? I'm gonna say the bottle city of Candor.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good choice. Yeah, he's like, I never want to leave this city.
Partly because since it's bottled and isolated like that, if there was a gingerbread house, there probably wouldn't be ants all over it, and I could totally eat it.
So, does visiting it mean that you have to be inside of it, or can you just, look at it?
Well, if Brainiac was somehow a really nice guy, maybe I could go up to Brainiac and be like, could you, shrink me down for, a day? And then let me back in. He probably wouldn't do that.
Just go up to number 5. He'd be nice to you.
Yeah. The other question was, what is your favorite and least favorite thing about Netflix? Go ahead, Vince.
It seems like Netflix has a lot of sequels, but not the original.
Yeah, that's right. I know. We talked about that.
Stupid. And my favorite thing is that they tend to get a lot of stuff that I'd never heard of and end up watching or being interested in. Hulu, my least favorite thing is that there's a lot of stuff that I need to get caught up on, and they don't have that. And I'm like, I got you, and now I can't use you until I get caught up.
Well, the nice thing about having both accounts, though, is that Netflix had that big account with a major company. I forget the name of it, that they finally let expire, and
Epix?
Epix, and then Hulu signed up with them. So if you lost that with Netflix, but you have Hulu, you've lost nothing because you get all the movies that you used to have from over there.
That's true.
But Netflix also just added a bunch of stuff, and they added some things that are, I think, cool, and some things that are even cooler than what they had before. So I don't know. I think it's good. My favorite thing about Netflix, Vince, is original programming. I think Netflix is hands down the best network that's out right now. They're a streaming TV network. You can watch it anytime you want to. You can binge watch it. You can watch most things. When we're talking about the brand new programming, everything in a season, when they put it out, you get it all at once. You don't have to wait week to week. And a lot of their programming is just quality. Some of the best storytelling is happening in that format because I've said this 1,000 times, but because TV producers, showrunners don't have to worry so much about cancellation, and they don't have to worry about meeting a deadline to get a show out for a particular day. They just have to worry about deadlines to get an entire thing out, and so they can plot at once. And I mean, if you watch a Netflix show where it doesn't seem like it knows where it's going, and it's plotting scene to scene, episode, there is no excuse for that, and it rarely happens. I mean, like, I think you got better storytelling probably from people that made, sometimes, I don't know if this is true, really crappy TV shows because they couldn't handle that pressure and meet those deadlines. I mean, there's probably some really great writers that don't know how to write for television that could do that, And so anyway, that's my favorite thing about Netflix right now. My least favorite thing, this changes every now. I guess sometimes they do weird things. My least favorite thing right now is so minor, but there's a good place to put this. Vince, I don't like that when they changed, and they didn't change a lot, but when they changed their aesthetic, now I don't know if you just watch on TV or not. I don't know if this has changed. I don't know if this has changed if you use like a video game system or a Roku box or whatever. I watch. I have a projector screen upstairs, as you know, and I watch a lot of things that way, so I'm using just a regular computer. I don't like that they don't have just a straight-up list of episodes for TV shows anymore. Like, you have to go to the season, and then you have to scroll this way to find the episode you're looking for. I think that's really annoying, especially because I run a Star Trek club, and I look for Star Trek stuff all the time, and sometimes if I don't know right away what season it's in, a lot of them I do, but I don't always. I used to be able to just go, pick the season, here is 4, I can see the entire list, and because I know episode titles, I can scan it and go, okay, there it is. But now, I can only see like 6 at a time. Mm-hmm. I think that's annoying.
And since it's widescreen, I mean, that's a pain in the butt. Mm-hmm. You know,
it's minor, but it's an annoying thing that I was going to do a rant on, and we haven't been able to do rants lately because we're doing this. So
I do like the PlayStation 4 interface. Where,
okay.
Where
I haven't looked at that.
I
have a PS4, but I'm not. I've got a Roku box in there, so it's redundant.
You'll have on the left-hand side of your screen, I guess for you guys, the left-hand side of your screen, you'll have the seasons. You'll select that season, and then over here you'll have a vertical listing. It'll have pictures of the episode, but it scrolls faster.
What it used to do.
So it works well on the PS4 and PlayStation 3.
Yeah. Well, Vince, we didn't get through a whole lot, but we're kind of out of time, so we're going to go ahead and bid everybody farewell. We will do one more of these. No matter how many more we get through next time, it'll be the last one for the multi-topic extravaganza for this year. And after that, we're going to go through, like I said, some of these questions, and we're going to mix it in with some other things we have planned. So look forward to that, and we'll see you again next time. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local comic book store.
Thanks for watching. We sure appreciate it.